Whitcliffe Park is situated just west of Horseshoe Bay. This beautiful corner of Hong Kong has a rugged coastline and spectacular views of colorful mountains and passing boats. The waters of the park are famous for their incredible diving. A tombolo is formed when a spit connects the mainland coast to an island. A spit is a feature that is formed through deposition of material at coastline. The process of longshore drift occurs in the smooth material along the coastline. Swash, backwash. The angle of swash is always dependent on the wind direction, and the backwash is always at the right angle. Swash, backwash, swash, backwash. Glacial tail is derived from the erosion and entrainment of material by the moving ice of a glacier. It is deposited some distance down ice to form terminal, lateral, medial, and ground moraines. A wave-cut platform is a narrow flat area often found at the base of a sea cliff or along the shoreline of a lake, bay, or sea that was created by erosion. Wave-cut platforms are often most obvious at low tide when they become visible as huge areas of flat rock. Extrusive rocks are formed on the surface of the earth from lava, which is magma that has emerged from underground. Intrusive rocks are formed from magma that cools and solidifies within the crust of the planet. Intrusive rocks cool from magma slowly because they are buried beneath the surface, so they have large crystals. Extrusive rocks cool from lava rapidly because they form at the surface, so they have small crystals. Texture reflects how a rock forms.
So we're now here to talk about the headlines and bay. Well, those two type of things are really depends on the hardness of the rocks. So over there, you can see a giant rock. So that's a kind of small headline because it's very hard to be eroded by the water. So that's why it's from the headline. And those two, like between the spit, is the two bay. So the bay is basically made by the soft materials. So through the four type of erosion. So as you can see there, over there. So you can see a giant rock over there. So basically the water are not.
Lions Bay is a small, mostly residential community in British Columbia, located between Vancouver and Squamish on the steep eastern shore of Hong Kong.
A dam is a barrier that stops or restricts the flow of water or underground streams. Reservoirs created by dams not only suppress floods but also provide water for activities such as irrigation, human consumption, industrial use, agriculture, and navigability. Debris flows can be triggered by intense rainfall or snowmelt, by dam break or glacial outburst floods, or by landsliding that may or may not be associated with intense rain or earthquakes. Angle of repose is the steepest angle in which a slope made of loose material is stable. At some point, however, the slope angle of the pile will always stay the same. This is because as the pile grows and its slope reaches a certain angle, some material will slide down the pile. This is the angle of repose and is the steepest angle at which a material can be heaped without sliding down.
Slides and debris flows are characteristic of mass wasting along the sea-to-sky highway. The combination of loose glacial deposits, steep slopes, and mountain stream basins, and the presence of precipitation has forced humans to adapt to their surroundings through a number of ways. The village of Lions Bay is one such community that has had to adapt to the treacherous conditions of the sea-to-sky corridor. Between 1980 to 1984, Lions Bay was the victim of a landslide devastating a number of houses, 9 bridges, and 12 people.
There are some mitigating techniques such as shotcrete. Shotcrete is concrete or mortar conveyed through a hose and pneumatically projected at high velocity onto a surface as a construction technique. First used in 1940, it is typically reinforced by conventional steel rods, steel mesh, or fibers. And drainage pipe is a pipe for carrying off rainwater, sewage. Orographic precipitation produced when moist air is lifted as it moves over a mountain range. As the air rises and cools, orographic clouds form and serve as the source of the precipitation, most of which falls upland of the mountain ridge. Vegetation development is sensitive to precipitation anomalies for nearly 80% of the Central Asian land surface. Results indicate a particularly strong sensitivity of vegetation in areas with 100 to 400 millimeters of annual rainfall. And the greater the precipitation, the faster the slide. Maritime polar air masses form over the northern Atlantic and the northern Pacific Oceans. They most often influence the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast. Maritime polar air masses can form any time of the year and are usually not as cold as continental polar air masses.
Stellarmus is not only the second largest granite monolith in the world next to Ayers Rock in Australia, but a symbol of Squamish status as the outdoor capital of Canada. Shannon Falls, right next door, is a famous example of the Henning Valley, with the waterfall cascading down and feeding the useful Shannon River.
A truncated spur is a spur which is a ridge that descends towards the valley's floor or coastline from a higher elevation, that ends in an inverted V face and was produced by the erosion truncation of the spur by the action of either streams, waves, or glaciers. One type of glacier erosion causes abrasion, while ice itself does not do much abrasion, but as the ice moves, it gathers rocks, sand, all these materials. So, as it moves over the land, glacier eroded all these materials on its way, just like boulders or worse. The valley glaciers smooth their floors and walls. Therefore, a V-shaped valley became a U-shaped once. As the foot and steep slopes, they gouged the bedrock and from a valley called Hanging Valley. Striation means a series of ridge, furrows, or linear marks, and is used in several ways. Glacier striation is one of them. Exfoliation is a process in which large flat rock fracture and are detached from the outcrop due to pressure release. As erosion removes the overburden from a rock from at high pressure deep in the Earth's crust, allows the rocks to expand, thus resulting in cracks and fractures along the sheet. Forced wedging means water flows into rocks cracks, and when it freezes, it expands 9% into ice, so which is cracking the rock. Oxidation is another kind of chemical weathering that occurs when oxygen combines with another substance that creates compounds called oxide. When rocks, particularly those with iron in them, are exposed to air and water, the iron undergoes oxidation, which can weaken the rocks and make them crumble.
The river behind is considered as a useful river. As you can see, the water is really clear, which means it carries less sediment. And over there, you can see the great difference of the gradient. So when a river is in its useful stage, it's eroded vertically. That forms a valley with steep sides and narrow floor. Also, the water moves really fast. That's also another characteristic of a useful river. There are 4 types of erosion, and we already mentioned before: traction, tension, corrosion, and hydraulic action. Well, there are about 4 types of transportation which a river can transport sediment. The first one is called attraction. It basically means the rocks roll under the water in the riverbed. The second one is called siltation. So siltation means the medium-sized or smaller rocks. It's kind of like a skipping. They skip along the river. And the third one is it's kind of like a solution again. So for example, if you grab a bunch of salt, you threw into the water, you can't see it, but it's there. And lastly, suspension. It means things suspend into much smaller pieces that allows its floating along the river. Or for example, the things like leaves or the woods that can able to floating along the river. So basically, these are the 4 types of river sediment transportation.
So basically, here's a good example of root wedging. So as you can see here, a root wedging is which the roots grow into cracks in rocks, and while they continue to grow, it expand the rocks. So times go, the space will be larger and larger. So you can see this tree grow between those rocks.
Brandywine Falls is the last stop on this excursion. You will notice the terrain has shifted significantly from Squamish as it is heavily influenced by volcanic activity. The trek is 15 minutes each way, but worth the short 15-minute hike.